You may not want to hear this, but sooner or later, every spiritually awake person discovers a truth that rattles them to the core. The more conscious you become, the more intensely you will feel desire. Not less, more. This is the paradox nobody teaches in meditation retreats, in spiritual books, or in polite spiritual communities. Because it feels almost scandalous to admit, how can someone who has awakened, someone who sees through illusions, someone who has dissolved egoic cravings, still feel the pull of lust so strongly? What if I told you the spiritually awakened struggle with lust, not because they are impure, but because they are awake? And what if I told you this struggle isn't a flaw, but a sign that something in you has come alive? Let's begin. There comes a moment on the spiritual path, sometimes early, sometimes decades in, when you begin to see the world not through the eyes of habit, but through the eyes of raw perception. Colors become more vivid, silence becomes more meaningful. The breath feels like a doorway. Your senses sharpen. Your awareness deepens. And without warning, desire intensifies. Now, this is not the animalistic hunger most people associate with lust. No. This lust is quieter, deeper, more psychological. It arises not from the body alone, but from awareness itself. For the spiritually awake, lust becomes a kind of spiritual fire, one they never asked for, one they don't always know how to handle. Because when you wake up, you don't just see life more clearly, you feel life more intensely. And this is where the paradox begins. You see, lust at its root is not about bodies, it is about aliveness. It is the mind's attempt to merge with something it feels separate from. It is life desiring life, consciousness wanting to taste itself, awareness craving contact with awareness. Most people experience lust as a distraction, something shallow, something impulsive. But the spiritually awake feel it differently. They feel it as a pull coming from a deeper layer of the psyche, almost like gravity, almost like a whisper saying, you are alive, you are here, reach, connect, merge. And this is terrifying because awakened people are used to seeing through illusions. They can sense ego motives. They can feel emotional currents underneath every thought. So when lust enters their awareness, it is illuminated under the brightest possible light. The spiritually asleep may simply act on desire or suppress it, but the spiritually awake, they witness it. They feel it in its raw, unfiltered state. They feel not just the desire, but the longing beneath the desire, the loneliness beneath the longing, the fragmentation beneath the loneliness, the ancient ache of consciousness wanting union. It is not lust they struggle with. It is what lust reveals. There's something else. When someone becomes spiritually awake, something strange happens to the boundaries of the self. They soften. They dissolve. You begin to feel others more deeply. You sense their emotions, their intentions, their fears, their pain, and you also feel their warmth, their beauty, their essence. The sleeping world interprets attractiveness at the level of form, faces, bodies, features, but the awakened perceive essence. They sense the soul behind the smile, the presence behind the eyes, the energy beneath the posture. This is why spiritually awake people often find themselves drawn to others in ways they cannot rationally explain. It is not physical attraction, it is energetic resonance. And this resonance can feel overwhelming, because when two conscious beings meet, even for a brief moment, something inside them recognizes something ancient, something familiar. A kind of spiritual memory awakens. And the body, being the humble instrument of consciousness, responds in the only language it knows, sensation. This is why the awakened struggle with lust in ways that confuse them. They feel desire, not just for bodies, but for souls. Not in a romantic sense, not in a physical sense, but in a deep, existential sense. A longing for connection so profound that the body cannot help but translate it as desire. But there is a deeper danger. When you awaken, you begin to live with a heightened sensitivity. You feel subtle energies. You notice small shifts in people's emotional states. You perceive layers of meaning inside every interaction. And this increased sensitivity means you also feel your own inner conflicts with far more intensity. For the spiritually asleep, lust is noisy, chaotic, loud. But for the spiritually awake, lust is silent, subtle, persistent, and frighteningly intelligent. It doesn't pull you with force. It pulls you with insight. It arises not as impulse, but as intimacy. Not as craving, but as curiosity. Not as need, but as recognition. The awakened struggle because their awareness makes desire harder to ignore. You cannot be unconscious about something once you are conscious of it. And the more conscious you are, the more you feel. Lust does not weaken with awakening. It reveals itself. You may have noticed something else. As you awaken, your identity starts to dissolve. And with that dissolution, the old ways you used to manage desire no longer work. You cannot distract yourself the way you used to. You cannot numb yourself the way you used to. You cannot lie to yourself the way you used to. Everything is too clear. And when everything becomes clear, desire becomes clearer too. This is why spiritually advanced people sometimes collapse into deep shame or confusion when they feel lust. They believe it means they have failed. They believe they should be above such impulses. They believe enlightenment should have burned away these cravings. But this belief comes from a misunderstanding. Awakening does not erase desire. Awakening illuminates desire. And when desire is illuminated, it becomes more intense, not less. Because now you are feeling it without the numbing buffer of unconsciousness. It is like suddenly realizing the ocean has always been deep, but only now you are able to see the bottom. But here is where the real danger emerges. The spiritually awake often mistake lust for regression, when in reality, lust is pointing towards something they have not yet understood, something they have not yet integrated, something they've not yet confronted. Lust is not trying to pull you backwards. It is trying to pull you deeper into yourself, into your shadows, into your unmet needs, into your unhealed wounds, into your longing for union, into your fear of intimacy, into your fear of being seen. Lust is the doorway. Awareness is the key. And the awakened cannot walk away from their doors. But let's go deeper, because if you are spiritually awake, the struggle you feel is not simply a matter of desire. It is a matter of identity, tension. You see, lust becomes more dangerous after awakening because you no longer experience it as a single impulse. You experience it in layers. The first layer is physical sensation. The second layer is emotional longing. The third layer is loneliness disguised as attraction. The fourth layer is energetic resonance. And the fifth, the deepest, is existential hunger, the primordial ache for unity. The spiritually asleep feel only the first layer. The spiritually awake feel all five. This is why awakened people often look shocked by the intensity of their own desire. They are not responding to a person, they are responding to an entire internal universe that just got stirred. And this stirring can shake them. Because awakening gives you clarity, yes, but it also removes your defenses. The barriers you once used to protect yourself from discomfort, from inner conflict, from spiritual tension, those barriers dissolve. What used to be a whisper inside you becomes a thunderclap. Awakening does not make you immune to desire. It makes you transparent to it. And when you feel desire through a transparent self, without egoic buffering, without repression, without delusion, you feel its full magnitude. This is why the awakened struggle, not less, but more. There is another reason lust becomes so challenging for the spiritually awake. They see the truth behind their desire, and the truth is often uncomfortable. Most people think lust is about wanting another person. But awakened people can see clearly that lust is about wanting a version of themselves that they have not yet embodied. Lust is projection. Lust is longing. Lust is a mirror. When you feel desire for someone, especially someone who resonates with you energetically, you are not just drawn to their body or beauty, you are drawn to the part of yourself they awaken. Awakened people know this, and that knowledge makes desire heavier to carry. Because when they feel pulled towards someone, they can feel the inner meaning behind the pull. It is not simple attraction. It is a symbolic message. It is the unconscious revealing itself. Desire becomes a riddle, a puzzle, a message from the depths. And the awakened cannot ignore messages. Let me tell you a secret almost no one speaks aloud. The spiritually awake often struggle with lust because they cannot lie to themselves about the true purpose of their desire. They cannot pretend they just want someone. They know what they really want: to feel alive, to feel connected, to dissolve separation, to merge with something larger than themselves, to experience unity not as a concept, but as a sensation. This longing is ancient. It is spiritual in nature. And the body interprets spiritual desire through physical mechanisms. The psyche translates cosmic longing into personal attraction. This is why the awakened often feel ashamed or confused. They are feeling something sacred through the body's most primal channel. They think they are being pulled into lust, when in reality, they are being pulled into union. But there is still a deeper layer, a layer that almost no spiritual teacher dares to discuss. When someone awakens, they experience a profound expansion of awareness. They feel connected to reality in a way they never have before. They feel the boundaries of the self dissolving. This is beautiful, but it is also destabilizing. The ego fears dissolution. The psyche resists it, and the body responds to that fear with biological signals. One of those signals is lust. Lust becomes the ego's final attempt to anchor itself into physical identity. It is as if the ego says, if you merge with everything, if you dissolve into awareness, if the self disappears, then at least merge with someone physically. At least confirm that you are still here, still separate, still you. Lust becomes a grounding mechanism, a survival instinct, a tether to the physical world. The spiritually awake struggle because they are torn between two forces, the force pulling them into boundlessness and the force pulling them into embodiment. Both forces are sacred. Both forces are natural. Both forces are psychological. Both forces are spiritual. But they move in opposite directions, and the awakened soul stands in the middle, trembling. Now, let's confront something that will make some of you uncomfortable. Spiritual awakening heightens awareness. Heightened awareness increases sensitivity. And increased sensitivity means you feel everything more intensely. The warmth of another human being, the softness of presence, the subtlety of attention, the vulnerability of someone's eyes, the quiet beauty of connection. These moments, which others overlook or take for granted, can feel overwhelming to the awakened. A single moment of genuine connection can feel intimate enough to stir desire. A simple gesture, a smile, a glance, a shared silence can feel like an entire universe opening. The spiritually asleep do not experience this. Their senses are dulled, their perceptions are foggy, their emotional bandwidth is narrow, but the spiritually awake They live without filters. And when you live without filters, even the smallest spark can feel like fire. This is why the awakened often avoid certain people, not because they fear them, but because they feel them too much. They feel the resonance, the attraction, the spiritual familiarity, the energetic magnetism. They feel where it could lead. And that path is often not physical, it is transformational. The awakened are not afraid of lust. They are afraid of what lust will force them to confront. But here is the strangest part of all. The spiritually awake do not struggle with lust because they want others too much. They struggle with lust because they do not know what to do with the immensity of their own energy. Awakening expands your internal universe. It increases your life force. It intensifies your awareness. It awakens dormant parts of the psyche. All of this energy has to go somewhere. And if it has no direction, it becomes desire. Desire is concentrated energy without a channel. Lust is spiritual energy, misinterpreted by the body. This is why monks, mystics, yogis, and awakened beings throughout history have all spoken about the same challenge. Not because they were impure, not because they were weak, but because awakening brings more energy, not less. And energy, when misunderstood, becomes craving. When repressed, becomes obsession. When misdirected, becomes lust. This is the paradox. The purer your awareness becomes, the more powerful your desire becomes. Not because you have fallen, but because you have risen. But let us step into even more dangerous territory. Because there is a moment, an unmistakable moment, that nearly every spiritually awake person encounters, yet almost none dare to confess. It is the moment you realize that your struggle with lust has nothing to do with the external world at all. Not with other people, not with attraction, not with temptation. It has to do with the parts of yourself you have not yet integrated. Because lust, for the awakened, is not simply desire, it is disowned energy trying to return home. You see, most people grow up splitting themselves into fragments. The part they show the world and the part they hide. The socially acceptable self and the shadow. The awakened, however, cannot maintain these splits for long. Awareness dissolves them. Integrity demands unity. Consciousness pulls everything into the light. But the shadow does not vanish. It returns as tension. It returns as longing. It returns as desire. And often, it returns as lust. Let me explain something gently, but with precision. For the spiritually awake, lust does not simply arise from the body. It arises from dormant psychological material. It can be the tenderness you were never allowed to express, the passion you suppressed, the love you withheld from yourself, the vulnerability you were taught to fear, the parts of your humanity you rejected to become spiritual. Awakening uncovers all of this. And at first it comes to the surface in the one form the psyche knows how to interpret: desire for another person. But the awakened quickly realize that the person triggering the desire is not the destination, they are the mirror. Lust, for awakened people, is not pointing toward another human being. It is pointing toward an unlived dimension of themselves. This is why it feels so urgent, so consuming, so intense, so confusing. You are not craving someone else. You are craving a part of you. A part you abandoned, a part you feared, a part you judged, a part you thought awakening would magically erase. But awareness does not erase the human. It reveals it. And when it reveals the parts you ignored for years or decades, the psyche lights up with a sense of spiritual hunger that the body interprets as lust. Now, here is the real confrontation. The spiritually awake often believe they should be above desire. They think enlightenment should sterilize their humanity. They imagine spirituality as a ladder, and at the top of the ladder, all impulses disappear. This is the myth. This is the illusion. This is the misunderstanding. Awakening does not eliminate desire. Awakening eliminates unconscious desire. Awakening does not erase lust. Awakening exposes the origins of lust. It shows you the emotional wound beneath the attraction, the loneliness beneath the longing, the fragmentation beneath the hunger, the existential ache beneath the fantasy. And this is why lust feels so explosive for the awakened. It is not just physical energy. It is truth emerging. Truth that may terrify you. Truth that may liberate you. Truth that may demand transformation. The awakened suffer because they cannot lie to themselves about desire anymore. They cannot pretend lust is random. They cannot treat it as impulsive. They cannot treat it as meaningless. They feel the meaning too strongly. Let us dig deeper. Consider this. When you awaken, the ego weakens, but it does not disappear. It becomes subtle. And the ego has one primal fear: ego death, the dissolution of identity, the loss of the separate self, the terrifying merging with everything. And what is the fastest way to avoid ego death? Merge with something physical. Lust is the ego's last attempt to anchor itself in form. It whispers, don't dissolve, don't expand, don't disappear into awareness. Come back into the body, come back into craving, come back into attachment. This is why lust often spikes right after a spiritual breakthrough. You meditate deeply, you feel expansive, you sense the boundaries of the self dissolving, and within hours, or sometimes minutes, desire erupts. This confuses many awakened people. They believe they are failing. But this is not failure. This is the ego grasping. Lust is the ego reaching for solidity, trying to reclaim territory, trying to reassert itself. Awakening expands you. The ego contracts you. Lust sits exactly in the space between. This tension is the struggle. And yet there is a softer dimension, a quieter truth. When you awaken, you become aware of your own vulnerability in a profound way. You see how fragile the human heart is, how delicate connection is, how fleeting presence can be, how rare it is to meet someone who sees you, not your mask. And so, when you encounter even a moment of genuine resonance with another being, something in you awakens. A tenderness, a longing, a familiarity, a sense of recognition. It is not lust for their body. It is nostalgia for a connection you can't explain, a connection that feels older than this lifetime, a connection that stirs something ancient in you. The body translates this recognition as desire, not because you want them physically, but because you feel seen. And being seen, truly seen, is one of the most intimate experiences a human can have. The awakened struggle with lust because they feel intimacy so deeply that even a moment of connection can feel like an invitation to merge. Not physically, but existentially, spiritually, energetically. And this overwhelms them. Now we approach the emotional core. The awakened person struggles with lust because they exist in a split state. One part of them is boundless, and one part is still profoundly human. Awareness makes them feel infinite, but the body makes them feel finite. Consciousness gives them spaciousness, but emotion gives them hunger. Their soul longs for unity, but their humanity longs for closeness. Lust becomes the place where these contradictions collide. It is the meeting point of human and divine, the friction point between spirit and flesh, the place where the infinite reaches through the finite and says, feel this, face this, integrate this. Lust becomes a teacher, a mirror, a confrontation, a guide. And the awakened person knows deep in their bones that what they are feeling is not simply passion. It is awakening pulling them deeper. And the deeper the pull, the stronger the struggle. But now we arrive at the heart of this entire phenomenon, the place nearly every awakened being eventually reaches. The place where desire stops being a psychological puzzle and becomes something far more spiritual. Because at its deepest level, the spiritually awake struggle with lust for one simple, astonishing reason. Lust is the body's crude translation of the soul's longing for union. Not union with another person, not union with a lover, not union with an ideal, but union with existence itself. Let me explain. When someone awakens, they begin to perceive the truth that the self is not separate from the world. The breath and the wind share the same rhythm. The mind and the sky reflect each other. The boundaries between me and not me become thin, translucent. You begin to feel the universe as an extension of yourself. This is beautiful, yes, but also profoundly destabilizing, because awakening reveals a truth the ego cannot comprehend. You are not alone, and you never have been. The separation was imagined. The loneliness was artificial. The self was a costume the mind stitched together. But the body doesn't know that. The body is still wired for separation. The body still believes it is a single organism living inside a fragile shell of skin. And when the soul awakens to unity, the body reacts with panic, with confusion, with longing. It senses the dissolving of boundaries but interprets it as desire. The body thinks desire is the bridge back to the world. The soul knows consciousness is the bridge. And the awakened person is caught between both truths, one ancient, one eternal. This is why the awakened struggle. They are not fighting lust at all. They are fighting the miscommunication between the soul and the body. Let's move deeper into this strange, beautiful conflict. You see, lust contains within it the structure of spiritual yearning. If you strip away the physical imagery, the biological activation, the fantasies and projections, what remains? A longing to merge, a longing to dissolve, a longing to be held by something larger than yourself, a longing to surrender. In this way, lust and enlightenment are two expressions of the same truth, one expressed through the body and one expressed through awareness. Lust says, lose yourself in another. Awakening says, lose yourself in everything. Lust attempts to dissolve identity through contact. Awareness dissolves identity through clarity. Lust seeks union through the body. Awareness seeks union through consciousness. Both long for the same destination, they simply take different roads. The spiritually awake struggle with lust because their awakening has intensified the desire for unity. But their body is still speaking the only language it knows. This is not a flaw. This is not regression. This is not impurity. This is biology and divinity trying to communicate using different dialects. And the awakened person must translate. There is another truth, a truth that may sting at first, but will feel liberating once it settles. When you awaken, your perception of beauty changes. You no longer see beauty in the way culture sees it, in shapes, faces, features, categories. You begin to see beauty in presence, in essence, in consciousness itself, in the way someone breathes, in the way someone listens, in the way someone simply exists. And because awakened people see so deeply, they also feel beauty more intensely. A simple conversation can become sacred. A moment of eye contact can become overwhelming. A person's energy can feel like poetry. This is not romantic. This is not sexual. This is what happens when awareness turns the ordinary into the profound. But the body, limited as it is, interprets profound beauty as desire. This is why awakened people often feel drawn to individuals who carry a certain warmth, a certain stillness, a certain presence. Not because they want them, but because they recognize them. They sense something ancient, something familiar, something that feels like home. And the body mistakes this recognition for attraction. The awakened suffer because they know this. They can feel the difference. They can sense the layers underneath their desire. They know when a longing is real and when it is symbolic. Yet, the body does not care. It reacts anyway. Awareness does not simplify desire. It complicates it. But now, let us arrive at the final revelation, the truth that lifts the weight off the heart and turns the struggle into clarity. The spiritually awake do not struggle with lust because they are impure. They struggle with lust because they are awakening into wholeness. And wholeness includes the body. Wholeness includes the psyche. Wholeness includes desire. Wholeness includes longing. Wholeness includes everything you tried to transcend. You were never meant to become inhuman. You were meant to become more fully human, more aware, more sensitive, more alive. Awakening is not about escaping desire. Awakening is about understanding desire, not suppressing it, not indulging it, but learning what it truly is. Desire is the signal that something in you is ready to be integrated. Lust is the doorway into your shadow. Longing is the doorway into your unmet needs. Attraction is the doorway into your unlived reality. And the struggle is the doorway into your next stage of awakening. Every strong desire you feel points to a part of yourself you have not yet embraced. If you listen closely, if you observe honestly, the desire will reveal what you truly long for. Connection, tenderness, self-acceptance, embodied presence, creative expression, union with the divine. Lust is never about what you think it is. It is always a messenger, always a teacher, always a mirror. And the spiritually awake struggle because they can hear the message far more clearly than most. The more awake you become, the more vividly you will feel your own humanity. The spiritually asleep escape desire through unconsciousness. The spiritually awake must walk through desire with awareness. This is the cost of clarity. This is the price of awakening. This is the paradox of spiritual maturity. Your desire intensifies because your awareness has deepened. Your longing grows because your boundaries have dissolved. You struggle because you have awakened. And what you are feeling is not a fall but an expansion, an invitation to become whole.